Donald Trump just took over the world. And the tariff plan is not what you think.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, before we start, I've got a great new sponsor for the show, Goldco. If you want to diversify your portfolio, protect your savings, safeguard your retirement, try investing in gold with Goldco. Go to MrReaganLikesGold.com or call 844-696-GOLD or click on the link in the description below. I love these tariffs, but no one seems to understand them. To understand what Trump is doing, you just have to do one thing. Read his book, The Art of the Deal. It's all right in there for you. Anyone can read it. Anyone can understand exactly what Donald Trump is doing. And so what is it that he's doing? What is this tariff plan really? Well, it's a bluff, but also it's not a bluff. What do I mean by that? To understand this, let's just go over the basics very quickly. What is a tariff? A tariff is simply a tax on imported goods typically imposed in order to persuade citizens to buy domestically produced versions of a particular product. So let's say that the Japanese wanted to persuade Japanese citizens to buy locally produced Japanese rice. But let's also say, hypothetically, that the US can produce rice much cheaper than they produce it in Japan because of large-scale farming. But like I said, Japan wants the Japanese people to buy their own locally grown rice to support local Japanese farmers. So Japan's government imposes a tax on all US rice imported into Japan. This is a tariff. And this, of course, is a real example. Japan really does this, and the tariff on rice imported into Japan is insane. The tariff is an eye-watering 778%. So if a grocery store chain in Japan wants to sell American rice and they import $1 million worth of it, because of the tax, they'd end up spending $8,780,000 for the rice, and $7,780,000 of that money would go to the Japanese government. Now, this is a massive oversimplification, and it's not precisely accurate, but it illustrates the point. So Trump comes out with this massive reciprocal tariff plan, and he's essentially saying, if you tax us, we are going to tax you. Sounds pretty fair, right?
The tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. China, first row. China, 67%. That's tariffs, currency manipulation, and trade barriers. So it's 67%. So we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
But I don't think that Trump's intentions are quite as simple as making trade fair for the US, protecting American businesses, and raking in trillions through these newly imposed tariffs. I think that Donald Trump's plan is actually a bit more nuanced than this, and it is absolute genius. I'll explain what I think is going on here in one moment. First, of course, I have to talk about my amazing sponsor. Elon Musk is again stirring the pot when he said he wants to live stream an audit of Fort Knox. Boy, would that be interesting. Did you know that the US government has 261.6 million troy ounces of gold stockpiled at Fort Knox? And that gold is still valued at the 1970s era rate of $42.22 an ounce. Now, if you haven't checked lately, gold is now nearing $3,000 an ounce. According to Fortune, the Wall Street Journal, and others, a repricing of that gold could send the gold markets even higher, proving that gold is not some old, outdated asset. Now, I have known that buying gold helps protect my savings, and if you're looking to diversify like I am, well, then I want you to head over to MrReaganLikesGold.com. You'll get a free gold and silver kit from my partners over at Goldco. Goldco is a great company that I trust. You could also qualify for an up to 10% instant match in bonus silver. Not a bad deal at all. Head over to MrReaganLikesGold.com. That's MrReaganLikesGold.com. So what is Trump's plan? What is he really up to? And why did I title this video, Trump Just Took Over the World? Well, as I said at the start of this video, it's all spelled out clearly in his book, The Art of the Deal. In this book, Trump explains that in order to win any negotiation, you just need two things. One, you have to have something that the other party wants, and hopefully more than how much you want what they've got. And two, you've got to be willing to walk away without a deal. And if you've got those two things going for you, well, you are unstoppable. But here's where the genius part comes in. Trump doesn't necessarily want the same thing from every country. For some countries, for most countries probably, he wants reduced tariffs, But for other countries, he may want military cooperation or geopolitical concessions. Maybe he wants to negotiate a peace treaty.
The international trading system consists of a web of relationships, military, economic, political. One cannot take a single aspect in isolation. This is how President Trump sees the world, not as a zero-sum game, but as interlinkages that can be reordered to advance the interest of the American people.
The point is that with these new tariffs, Trump has given the United States something amazing. He's given us leverage.
I say this because I know it's what President Trump believes. He believes three things. One, it is a good source of revenues. Two, it protects our important industries and the employees. And three, he's added the third leg to the stool, and he uses it for negotiating.
Not just leverage, but massive leverage. Because of these tariffs, anything Trump wants, Trump gets. These tariffs are the genie in the lamp. They give Donald Trump one wish for every country in the world. UK, stop regulating speech on social media. We'll lower the tariffs. Done. Iran, sign this nuclear weapons deal. And you know what? We'll lower the tariffs. Done. Mexico, go fund the border wall and we will lower the tariffs. Done. But for most countries, the leverage that Donald Trump has created will be used to reduce or remove their tariffs on us or their burdensome regulations against us. This is massively beneficial, not only for our country, but for every country in the world, even those who have imposed tariffs upon us, because free trade will give the citizens of these countries more opportunities for better, cheaper products. And so in this sense, the tariffs are kind of a bluff. Trump has presented them principally as a way to bring industry back in the US and to protect American businesses. And they will. But I think the motive of leverage to gain an advantage in negotiations is a far more significant aspect than he's been letting on. But here is the best part, and this is the bit that makes these tariffs not a bluff. If the countries don't want to play ball, if they've got nothing that we want other than the removal of their tariffs and trade barriers against us, and they refuse to lower those, well then, we'll just keep the tariffs on them. This will make us billions of dollars for our U.S. government, and it'll pay for Donald Trump's tax cuts, and it'll help reduce both the debt and the deficit. And this should spur massive growth in our economy. U.S. businesses will make more money and grow. Foreign businesses will produce more here in the United States, and that means more jobs and higher pay for everyone. So if this is all true and these amazing things are going to happen because of these tariffs, well, then why are Democrats criticizing them? Even some conservatives, why are they criticizing these tariffs? Well, in order to discuss this, I need to go through a little basic macroeconomic theory. Basic macroeconomic theory proposes that if three guys, guy 1, 2, and 3, they each produce something that they need for their lives themselves. Let's say they each produce milk, they each produce eggs, and they each produce wheat. Well, then the division of time, energy, and resources that it takes to produce all three of these products, they will be sub-optimized and inefficient, and so each will only be able to make just enough of each of these things to survive. But if each of these men specialize, that is, if each of them produces just one of these things, they can optimize production, they can become extremely efficient, and they can produce not only enough for all three men, but a surplus that can then be sold to other men elsewhere. And then these three men can buy, say, luxury goods for their homes. So it's all about specialization, optimization, and efficiency. Now, just imagine that each of these men is a country, and that'll give you the basis for macroeconomic theory and the fundamental concept behind globalization. The reason that tariffs are bad is because it reduces our options and it increases prices.
When tariffs get imposed on goods, who actually ends up footing the bill? Well, to put it simply, you do. The purpose of tariffs is to make foreign goods more expensive for you, the consumer. It's a way to disincentivize you from buying those foreign goods and instead shopping domestically.
And so even if you have reciprocal tariffs, the best outcome is that instead of businesses on both sides buying cheap goods and keeping their money for reinvestment and growth, businesses buy expensive goods, but much of that revenue goes to governments. And then these governments, they decide what to do with that money. And that's, of course, great for corrupt bureaucrats who want to steal tax money, but it's not great for the people. In this case, things are a little bit different, though, because we have a Trump administration dedicated to the evisceration of corruption in the federal government. And there is some talk of reducing tax rates, thus putting the money drawn from these tariffs right back into the pockets of the American people.
Now, one of the biggest issues may be what to do with the newly anticipated import tariff revenues. It could be $600 billion a year. Now, this would be a tremendous boon to all Americans, to business, and to the goal of a 4% economic growth rate if we cut tax rates across the board. Individual income tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, even cutting the Social Security payroll tax. And by the way, these kinds of additional tax cuts on top of the Trump tax cuts already out there would help, I think, to ease the way or soothe the way towards any short-term damage from the initial effects of the tariffs. How about that? Lots of revenues coming in if all this goes through. Let's cut tax rates with those revenues. Just saying, you know me, never met a tax cut I didn't like.
There is one more reason why economists dislike tariffs, even reciprocal tariffs. It's because by levying tariffs, there is a real danger of sparking a trade war.
Trade wars. They don't involve missiles, tanks, or guns, but they can cause a lot of damage. When farmers in the U.S. started struggling financially in the late 1920s, their representatives in Congress tried to help them with tariffs. And by the time it passed through Congress, the bill was calling for 890 different tariffs to be raised on a huge variety of items. More than 1,000 American economists signed a petition urging President Herbert Hoover not to sign the bill. They claimed that raising so many tariffs so high would be a major mistake. They predicted that it would harm most Americans once other countries started retaliating with their own tariffs. International outrage was swift. Some countries, including Spain, Mexico, and Canada, struck back with increased tariffs on American goods. U.S. automobiles, iron, and steel exports dropped by over 80%, though the dangers posed by trade wars today have even greater potential for political destabilization and economic hardship on a global scale.
In the case of Trump's tariffs, though, a trade war is, I think, extremely unlikely. I'd actually go so far as to say it's practically impossible. And this is because Donald Trump implemented tariffs on almost 200 countries all at once. You see, if Trump imposed a tariff on just a few countries, they may talk back and forth between themselves and go, you know what, we're going to fight back. And so maybe a trade war ensues. But 180 countries all at once, I mean, some of them are going to fold immediately. And we are seeing that now. And they're going to drop their tariffs. They're going to negotiate with Trump. They're going to give him something that he wants. And when that happens, other countries are going to see these concessions and they're going to start thinking about a way that they too might strengthen their trade relationship with America and convince Trump to drop the tariffs. And after that, it'll be a race between countries to see who can make deals the fastest. I think Trump is going to get what he wants out of all of this far faster than anyone imagines. Now, in spite of all the bad things that economic theory warns us about tariffs, there are a couple of really good things that tariffs can do. Firstly, reciprocal tariffs can pressure other countries into dropping their tariffs and their other restrictions. And this is, of course, what Donald Trump wants. As I said, Trump is creating leverage. And this is the most obvious use of that leverage. Create free, fair trade between countries and thus create more opportunities for U.S. companies to export goods and increase profits. The other great thing about tariffs, at least in certain circumstances, is the broadening of the variety of U.S. industries and thus the broadening of the variety of new job opportunities for American citizens. In the U.S., we have a massive welfare program. 20% of Americans receive some form of welfare. 20%. Now, why is this? Well, since the 1960s, the U.S. has been shifting from an industrial economy to a knowledge-based economy. That is, we've been shifting from industries like manufacturing, mining, and agriculture to industries like technology, finance, and healthcare. And this has always been viewed as a good thing. The future of America was envisioned to be a Star Trek: The Next Generation style utopia where everyone had the equivalent of multiple doctorate degrees and they all listened to opera. But here's the thing. Not everyone in America wants to be a lawyer, and a lot of people actually kind of hate opera. Some people like fixing cars for a living. Some people like building houses. Some like fishing or farming or baking. Some people want to work in the forest cutting down trees. Some particularly dumb people even like making YouTube videos. So yeah, macroeconomic theory states that the optimal way to produce the best, cheapest goods and provide the best, cheapest services is to specialize. And that certainly makes sense for countries with smaller populations. But in America, our population is huge. 350 million people. And so we have a huge spectrum of people who are best suited to a huge spectrum of jobs. Now, jobs tend to be correlated to IQ. That is, it is believed that people tend to be limited in what they can do by their IQ. And it's certainly true that some people can achieve great success in fields that on paper they shouldn't be able to do well in at all. But for our purposes, this correlation is helpful because in my view, if I'm doing something that's extremely difficult for me day in and day out, and I'm not particularly productive and I'm not improving, that's depressing. It does not inspire me to keep going and doing great things because I'm just trying to do well enough to survive. And that's not a fun life. It's much better to thrive in a career that you're really good at. And ideally, the job challenges you, but in a fun way. And you figure things out, you work hard and constantly triumph over these challenges. So maybe utopia is not everyone being lawyers or doctors. Maybe a utopia is just everybody doing a job that they're best suited to and that they like. And look, there are very few people in America who have such a low IQ that they literally cannot work. These are people with an IQ below 70. I asked Grok to calculate the total percentage of Americans who are so physically or mentally disabled or have such a severe mental illness that they literally cannot work. And the highest estimate that Grok gave me was 2.5%. That is the number of Americans who should be on welfare. Everyone else needs a job that they can thrive in and ideally that they love. The job market should skew in the direction of lower IQ professions because people who are intelligent enough to do something intellectually demanding, they don't always want to do that kind of job. So it makes sense that there would be more people working less intellectually demanding jobs rather than more. And so my point is that you want as many job opportunities as possible, especially in the middle and left-hand side of the IQ graph. Because once you get up to 115 and above, there are really fewer and fewer jobs that can be done at that level, and far fewer people are capable of filling them. At 130 to 145, we're talking about engineers, lawyers, doctors, and scientists. Over 145, these guys are like nuclear physicists and theoretical mathematicians. So in America, we really need a lot of jobs that are moderately intellectually demanding or not intellectually demanding at all, and we need very, very few jobs available for the crazy high IQ people. Basically, the job parabola should be to the left of the IQ parabola, but that's not what we see. The job parabola is actually to the right of the IQ parabola, meaning that we have more jobs available for high IQ people than we have high IQ people. That doesn't make any sense, but that is the effect of the Star Trek The Next Generation utopian thinking. Now, in theory, I could be convinced that it's okay to have a significant number of Americans doing jobs that are hypothetically beyond their intellectual capacity. I mean, I am a true optimist. I love an underdog story. And some people are certainly able to perform at a higher level than that which their IQ might indicate. However, I think in many professions, in many industries, the reason for this skewed distribution is not hardworking, creative overachievers who go beyond their potential, but rather DEI. Sometimes people are hired for jobs that they really aren't qualified for. This is a major problem with DEI. This is, of course, a massive problem because if you're working in a group or you're relying on something to get something done and they don't do it well, they don't do it correctly, or they don't do it at all, everyone in the office suffers. And it can even be psychologically traumatizing for the imposter themselves. When you throw somebody into a career who's not capable of functioning comfortably within that profession, they can suffer immensely. So why don't we just let people do what they're good at? Why don't we just let people do what they love doing? And I know this all seems like it's a digression from the subject of tariffs, but here's the point. We currently have a very skewed workforce in favor of high-paying jobs for high IQ professionals. But this is totally inappropriate. By bringing back a broader variety of job types, Americans will be better able to find jobs that are perfectly suited to them. It's about creating enough variety of professional opportunities that everyone in America can find a job that they are very well suited to and that they love and that they thrive in. All right, now let's get back to talking about these tariffs directly. One of my favorite conservative thinkers, Mr. Thomas Sowell, has spoken out skeptically about the tariffs. Some have even characterized this as being critical of Trump's tariff plan. But that's not exactly right. What Sowell said was that these tariffs might be good, they might be bad, but he's uncertain of what might happen. And so, to me, what he said simply expressed skepticism. I'm not sure I would go so far as to call it criticism. Here's the video. I will let you come to your own conclusion.
Now, insofar as he's using these tariffs to get very strategic things settled, and that he is satisfied with that. But if you set off a worldwide trade war, that has a devastating history. Everybody loses because everybody follows suit, and all that happens is that you get a great reduction in international trade. The other, it's disturbing in another sense. Franklin D. Roosevelt, when he was president in the 1930s, said that you have to try things, and if they don't work, then you admit it, you abandon that, and you go on to something else, and you try that until you come across something that does work. Now that's not a bad approach if you are operating within a known system of rules. But if you are the one who's making the rules, then all the other people have no idea what you're going to do next. And that is the formula for having people hang on to their money until they figure out what you're going to do. And when a lot of people hang on to their money, you can get results such as you got during the Great Depression of the 1930s. So if this is just a set of short-run ploys for various limited objectives limited in time, fine, maybe. But if this is going to be the policy for 4 long years, that you're going to try this, you're going to try that, you're going to try something else, a lot of people are going to wait. I think what happened in the stock market recently, when things came down substantially for quite a while, and I note that various people are holding on to their money before they do anything, because they don't know where this is going to lead.
Now, Mr. Sowell says that a trade war would be bad, and that is true, of course, but I don't think he's seriously considered the likelihood of that, because I just think there's very little chance. Look, as I said before, I think that once one country starts to negotiate, and then a second and a third, a precedent will be set. I think that other countries are obviously going to see this, and it is going to spark a cascade effect, and soon most, if not all countries, will negotiate and capitulate to Donald Trump in some way or another, creating a new era of free and fair trade between nations. Naturally, Democrats are still going to say that Trump's plan was terrible no matter what happens. And as I said at the top of the show, these guys are all disingenuous. They have all argued for tariffs in the past. But look, this move was genius for Donald Trump. He has granted himself leverage for future negotiations with almost every country in the world. He will increase revenues for the U.S. federal government, and he will broaden the kinds of careers Americans have available for them in the future. Trump now controls the future not only of America, but of most other countries in the world. Trump truly did figure out a way to take over the world. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section below. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.